For ages, developers have used satisfying progression to sell their games. World 1 to World 2 in Mario Bros. Or watching something go from nothing to something, like a farming game. These are all senses of progression, and this is what developers have been using for ages now to gauge their audience and make them feel like they need a purpose to play their game. And I want to interview a few people and figure out what their sense of progression is and why they want to progress through the games they play. Let's dive deep and explain to you the meaning of progression. The first person I'm going to interview is my good friend Nate. He plays a wide variety of games. He plays flight sims, shooting games, RPGs, anything really. So he's going to be a good person to interview to understand sense of progression from a wide variety gamer. In your eyes, what is progression?
I see it as, steady progress towards the end goal if there's a main storyline or just achieving a short-term goal.
With this being said, there's clearly a distinct split between two players and their sense of progression. And there's also a split between the players and the game. For example, completing the story, or just trying to do your best for your own sense of progression, your own personal sense of progression. Do you have to see a game through to the end to feel like you've progressed?
No. Sometimes I can just complete a certain section and it's like, okay, getting somewhere.
Yeah, that makes sense. This further proves my point in, yes, everyone has a different sense and a different take on progression. Like, for example, me, I have to finish the game, or even go beyond finishing the game and going for a completionist of doing every little nook and cranny the developers crammed into the game in order for me to feel satisfied. But Nate here feels like he can just do one level, be done, and be good. Do you feel real progression during an easy task, like beating Mario Bros. Or something, or does it have to be a daunting task?
I can definitely feel progress from a easy task because it's like, oh hey, there's this little thing I did. That's something. It's especially in like instances of grinding where it's like, okay, that's one more thing less that I need for this other thing.
Like that grinding is just a one step towards the bigger, longer, or the bigger picture and the bigger goal, so you feel like RPG is a very good example. That's kind of the game that I'm very intelligent on, is just that little tiny, sense of getting damage going from 101 to 102, or getting your health up, or going back to previous areas when an RPG makes you backtrack, and then just one-shotting the enemies that took you forever. It really is a crazy feeling of progression. Yeah.
It is. And like in rhythm games, where it's like, I only cleared this much in my first attempt, but on my second attempt, I actually managed to do just a little bit better. Third attempt, I didn't do as good, so let me try that one more time. And then, I did as good as my first attempt.
Very interesting. It's really like, yeah, whenever I'm like watching other people, I really shouldn't do this, but I like to compare myself to others, and I try to I watch another person do this, and I'm like, oh, alright, now I gotta go try this. And then it's just like, it's basically impossible to be as good as some of these other people. Like,
right, because, go ahead, sorry.
They're crazy. They spend like thousands of hours just learning the ins and outs of these games, and and I noticed, I've talked to a few of these people, the best player in Project Diva, and he basically, once he got to the end of the goal, there's no more progression. Like, he has full comboed every song on Extra Extreme. He has gotten goods, all perfects on like everything, and he just doesn't feel progression anymore in a game, and he basically warns people, don't do that.
Oh wow.
Don't get so good at a game that because you'll just lose. You'll lose that sense of progression.
Yeah, I can see that because then you just reach a point of there's nothing left, which is where you can tie it back to RPGs because it's like, you finish the main story, and if it's one of those games, for example, Kingdom Hearts, where it puts you back at the save point before the final boss, it's like, I've already done everything else up to this point. I'd have to start a new save file just to, go back through and re-experience the story, but then I already know most of the story beats.
Yeah, man, you gotta have an incentive. The developers have to put an incentive for you to go back through. I mean, I'm just gonna mention Dark Souls. Going through New Game Plus 1 all the way to 7, it gets harder and harder and harder, so you get that sense of progression every single time you replay that game up until 7. And I mean, there's so many challenge runs to just that progression bar. The only way that you're going to reach maximum progression in a Dark Souls game is if you no hit, no close, fists only.
Oh.
Go through the whole entire game and all the DLC. And only like 4 people in the world have done that. So they've hit the maximum progression. And then of course there's mods that make the game even harder. So that's a game I think infinitely just progresses. People just get better and better and better.
Yeah.
So we really got to a conclusion here in that you don't have to progress to an insane degree, and certain players have certain senses of progression. For example, like I said, those crazy, really good players that will continue to push the limits of the games, like you saw in the footage. You'll see rhythm gamers pushing to the highest difficulties, but once you reach that highest level of progression, there's nothing left. There's nowhere left to go. It's just like life. When you reach the highest amount of wealth and you have a mansion and a bunch of cars, you feel this nothing left. There's nothing really to do. And the same thing can be applied to video games. And I'm going to interview my sister, who is a very casual gamer and plays on her side time when she's all done with work and stuff, and we'll see what she thinks about progression. What in your eyes is progression?
Progression is the development of something changing or getting better. I guess it doesn't even have to necessarily be better, just changing at all. You can see as something progresses and you're noticing new things or different things.
We can definitely infer that people's sense of progression is somewhat similar in how progression is. It's more so how they get to it and how they feel about it. How far do you have to progress before you feel satisfied with the outcome?
I guess it just kind of depends on what outcome you're trying to achieve, because some people will feel satisfied if they just achieve a little bit of something, and other people are more perfectionists, where they don't feel like they achieved anything until they achieve everything.
I agree with that. Do you feel real progression during an easy task like beating Mario Bros. Or something, or does it have to be a daunting task like Bloodborne or something?
For me personally, I feel progression with really accomplishing much of anything, even the smaller, easier tasks. Just because sometimes the daunting tasks for me aren't as achievable, and I feel like it's not healthy to get in a loop where you're beating yourself up over not being able to achieve a really daunting task.
My sister here understands my point of view and also Nate's point of view, in that you want to feel little bits of progression, and again, certain things are achievable for other players, and other people don't want to put the burden on themselves and put the stress on themselves trying to be better than what really is needed to feel a sense of progression. Do you have to see a game through to the end in order to feel like you've progressed?
No, not really, because part of that has to do with how long the game is. Like, if you're playing a 60-hour game, it would kind of suck to feel like you haven't progressed if you've been playing, through half of it.
So in conclusion, there are the pick up and play type of players that will play the game, and they can pick up the controller and just, I don't know, plant a flower or two, and they feel progression. They feel like that sense has been accomplished, and that's what keeps them coming back to play the game. Then, on the other hand, there's the people that can't just beat a level, or even two. They have to fully analyze, fully make that their job, basically, or their hobby, to feel that sense of progression and to complete the entirety of the experience and see, I suppose, the creator's vision on what they created and how you're playing it.